Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. The search is on for two toddlers missing from their adoptive parents' home in California. A grandfather's sentence, his granddaughter dying after falling to her death from an open cruise ship window. Actors team up to offer a big reward for information in the assault of a 91-year-old man. Why they say Asian Americans are being targeted. A substitute teacher accused of lewd acts in Georgia.
Don't know what possessed her to think that was normal or okay.
And the parents charge an 11-year-old's death 1 year after his body was found stuffed in a storage bin.
They face multiple criminal charges, including child abuse, poisoning, and torture.
On Crime Daily, I'm Brian Buckmire, along with Terri Austin. Two little boys from California have been missing now for well over a month. Law&Crime's Angenette Levy is here with a plea from the boys' adopted family members.
Yeah, Brian, no one has seen Orrin or Orson West since December 21st. And sadly, police in California City, California, suspect foul play.
Orrin West is only 4 years old. His younger brother Orson is 3. The toddler's adoptive parents told police in California City, California, that they were in the backyard playing and then vanished and might have walked into the California desert. Orrin and Orson's extended family posted a message over the weekend on Medium saying they have been terrorized. They wrote, "For those who wish us harm, we will continue to pray that you pivot your energy and make it all about the search for Orrin and Orson."
Now, the reward for the return of the two boys has increased now to $120,000. I contacted the California City Police Department, and I also tried to reach the adoptive boys' parents. Neither of those attempts to reach the people there were successful, but we are told and have learned that the parents have not been named suspects in the case. The FBI and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children are both assisting with the case at this time. Brian?
Thanks, Angenette. Joining us today is retired Assistant Director of Counterintelligence for the FBI, Frank Figliuzzi, and Terri Austin. Frank, the reward for information, as you heard Angenette say, has risen to $120,000. Authorities have received over 20,000 tips with no named suspects. What do you believe the next steps are in finding those young children?
Yeah, the insertion of the FBI in this case is critical because they bring this national viewpoint to the case, and their database is filled with similar crimes and known suspects. But the reward thing is very interesting here because rewards are not necessarily proven to help solve the case, but rather they generate what we're doing right now, which is more public discussion, which is exactly what's needed here. And the FBI knows how to ask the right questions in these. So often, the police come in and ask neighbors when they do interviews, have you seen anything unusual? Did you see anything unusual that day? And the reality that we know is that actually it's not the unusual. It's the delivery man, the postal guy, the construction guy that you see in the neighborhood every day and that saw those kids and saw an opportunity. That's the focus that needs to happen. Who's been in that neighborhood regularly and felt comfortable operating there?
Now, Terri, I hate asking this question. I hope we find the children, but it's been almost 50 days since the children went missing, and considering how young they are you worried that we may not find them alive?
I am worried, Brian. I mean, they were only 3 and 4 years old. And of course, if they wandered out into the desert area, they would not be able to survive. Even adults would not be able to survive. But it seems as though the police chief thinks that there's something that went awry, that they're not roaming around somewhere, that someone took them from the yard or from the house. So I'm hoping if that's the case, that they are still safe and sound, maybe with a relative, and soon we will find out exactly what happened to these two little boys.
I join you in those hopes, Terri, for sure. Angenette, the police were back at the parents' house recently. What exactly happened?
Yeah, there have been several searches for the children. They've actually searched some areas in the ground to see if there had been any movement in the ground, some disturbances where children may have been buried or anything else. Some published reports suggest that animal remains were found, but nothing indicating that the children had been buried there. They even went and searched a house in Bakersfield where the adoptive father used to live, because the family had just in September of last year moved to California City, California. They did not find anything to indicate that the children had been buried on that property either.
Thanks for the update, everyone. A judge in Puerto Rico has sentenced a grandfather for the heartbreaking death of a little girl. Terri Austin has the latest.
Brian Salvatore Anello was sentenced to 3 years probation as part of his deal to plead guilty to negligent homicide. Prosecutors say Anello dropped his 18-month-old granddaughter from an open cruise ship window docked in Puerto Rico. Chloe Wiegand died from the 150-foot fall. The judge agreed Anello can serve probation in his home state of Indiana. According to testimony from the family, Anello helped raise the girl. He claims he held her up to the window, thinking the glass would hold her. The window was, in fact, open.
The fact that the grandfather pled guilty in the criminal case mean that Royal Caribbean is off the hook in any way in the civil case?
Absolutely not, Brian. In fact, the civil case is still proceeding, and there's a good claim against the cruise line because there are laws that state the cruise has to make sure that their passengers are safe. So that includes window guards, etc. And even though the father or the grandfather pled guilty, he really said, and the family says, that this was an accident. So in fact, you could have both the criminal case proceeding and the wrongful death action proceeding at the exact same time. One has nothing to do with the other.
Yeah, so maybe he's pleading guilty because, again, don't want to bring the family through a trial. You take the probation, you're admitting guilt, but that doesn't leave Royal Caribbean off the hook. Maybe something more will develop in the civil case. Thank you, Terry. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, the reward and arrest of a suspect accused of violently shoving a 91-year-old man to the ground. But first, the viral video of a man accused of streaking at the Super Bowl, who he is, and the charges he's facing after. A 5-year-old girl remains in critical condition after a multi-vehicle crash involving the Kansas City Chiefs assistant coach. Police in Kansas City say Britt Reed struck 2 trucks pulled over on the side of a highway near the team's stadium last Thursday. According to a search warrant, Reed admitted to having 2 to 3 drinks and taking Adderall before getting behind the wheel. A 4- and 5-year-old child were taken to the hospital with 5-year-old Ariel sustaining life-threatening injuries. Reed's father and head coach of the Chiefs, Andy Reid, told reporters after the game that his heart bleeds for everybody involved in the crash. Britt Reed did not travel with the team to Florida for the Super Bowl. And a Florida man is facing a misdemeanor charge after running onto the field at the Super Bowl game Sunday night. Yuri Andrade is accused of streaking wearing a pink leotard as he tried to spin his way away from security. The sheriff's office posted video of the incident on Facebook saying that it was the best tackle of the night. Andrade was released from jail on $500 bail. Actors Daniel Dae Kim and Daniel Woo are offering a $25,000 reward for information that helped find the suspect behind the attack of a 91-year-old man. Surveillance video shows the man walking down a street in a Chinatown district of Oakland, California. The suspect is seen coming from behind and shoving the man to the ground. Oakland police say the same suspect also attacked a 60-year-old man and 55-year-old woman the same day. The actors posted on social media that they're teaming up to raise awareness about crimes against Asian Americans. Former homicide prosecutor Bernardo Villalona says proving hate crime charges could be difficult for investigators.
These are the cases that makes you want to be a prosecutor, to prosecute someone who can be so cold and callous to prey upon the elderly and push a 91-year-old man down to the ground and continue walking, that man unprovoked, not doing anything to you, and you just throw that person down to the ground. Come on, unacceptable, unacceptable. Unfortunately, trying a hate crime case, you're going to have to prove that the reason that the man pushed a 91-year-old man down was because of his race, his origin. So it's going to be difficult in that regard. But just for the assault itself, this is uncalled for.
It appears their efforts have worked. The district attorney's office says they've now charged a suspect in the attack.
I now am announcing that we have filed charges, as the chief said, against an individual identified as Yahya Muslim. We have charged him with 3 counts of assault, 245A4, that involves 3 separate victims. The last one being the 9-year-old victim that we've been talking about in the video that we saw. The individual, Mr. Muslim, is also charged with inflicting great bodily injury. He is charged with committing a crime against an elderly person
Back to break down the apparent targeting of those in the Asian American community is Frank Figliuzzi and Terri Austin. Frank, it appears the authorities have identified a suspect who is already in jail for elder abuse. That charge, plus the 3 victims, could the targets also be of the elderly?
Yeah, so the track record here is very helpful, but I can tell you that FBI profilers would offer a tremendous amount here. Here's why. They would pore over this suspect's life. Was he fired by someone with a certain ethnicity, or does he have some hatred toward elders that is reflected in other aspects of his life? Maybe his social media, maybe his computer hard drive. But the fact that he's already been on the radar for elder abuse tells us that's likely a motivator, but profilers would dig into his psyche and try to figure out what that motivation is, because it will help them decide on charges in terms of prosecution.
Yeah, it could help for deciding on charges and also for conviction if they can get that information in front of a jury. Now, Terri, serial racist, elder abuser, or something else? What do you think?
It could be a combination of both. And the good thing is that under the California Penal Code, you can be charged with a hate crime, obviously, if it is as far as race is concerned, but also as far as age is concerned. I mean, you just have to show that you're singling out people because of those characteristics. And the offense can really be just for the hate crime, or it can be an aggravating factor, or it can be, enhancement under this section. So hopefully they will be able to determine, like Frank said, the intent, and then after that, they will be able to put the hate crime on top of that. So the penalties will be greater.
Yeah, like Frank said, it's going to take a little bit of digging, maybe into that person's background, social media, things of that nature, and maybe also their mental health to see where that may lead. Thank you both. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, a Georgia substitute teacher accused of lewd acts in the classroom. Plus, the brothers of a victim goes after her murderer in court. The video, the court hearing, and the sentence still ahead. An Ohio man was sentenced to life in prison for killing his pregnant wife. Law and Crime founder and host of the A&E series Court Cam tells us the hearing didn't exactly go as planned.
We take you inside the Muskogee County Courthouse for the sentencing of Zadarius Platt. Platt's on trial for the murder of his pregnant wife, Jelani Platt. He faces multiple charges, including aggravated assault, a weapons charge, and feticide, the destruction of a fetus. According to investigators, Platt choked Jelani, then shot her in the head. Here's Platt on day 1 of what is sure to be an emotionally charged trial. Seated off camera, just a few feet from Platt, is Gerald Carter, brother of the slain victim. Officers restrain the devastated Carter, who continues to scream in anger and frustration. He cries helplessly as Platt is quickly removed from the court.
Don't get up! Don't get up!
Court officers hold Carter down, but he refuses to let up.
Don't get up! Don't get up now!
And things could get worse, as one of them has a taser pressed against Carter's back.
Other arm! Give me the other arm now!
Eventually, the officer puts the taser back in the holster and tries his best to calm Carter down.
You die! And you deserve it!
Throughout the struggle, heartbroken family members look on. Though things begin to settle, minutes after the initial incident, Carter's anguish can still be seen and heard by everyone in the courtroom. Before the trial reconvenes, Judge Bobby Peters bans Carter from returning to the courtroom, but doesn't pursue any charges. The outburst has no effect on the prosecution's case, as the defendant is convicted on all counts. Platt sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences, plus 5 years for the weapons charge, to be served in Dooley State Prison in Georgia.
When we come back, police announce charges for the death of an 11-year-old boy. A substitute teacher in Georgia is behind bars accused of lewd acts in the classroom, where children could see. Angenette Levy is here with more on the disturbing allegations.
Yeah, Brian, Amelia Ressler was a substitute teacher in Carroll County, Georgia. She's facing 19 counts of molestation involving second graders that she was teaching. Now, it's important to point out that in Georgia, molestation does not have to include actual physical touching. And the sheriff's office there says Ressler masturbated in the classroom, and a video of that act actually ended up on social media. That's how the investigation started.
From what we understand, she videoed it herself and then disseminated it. We're not sure if that's still part of the investigation, if she sent it to someone directly and then they posted it up to social media, or if she did it herself. Obviously, children have to be interviewed differently than adults, so we will have to do forensic interviews on those children to see what, if anything, they saw. You know, it could be that some saw it and some didn't. So we're still trying to navigate through that right now.
Is actually the spokesperson for Carroll County, Georgia. She says that when deputies first approached Amelia Ressler, she was actually taken aback. Then they showed her the video and she asked for an attorney, so they never got the chance to really speak with her about that video and the allegations. When Ressler appeared in court, a judge denied bail for her. Brian, we'll send it back to you.
What a strange case. Thanks, Angenette. A father and stepmother are facing multiple criminal charges nearly a year after police found an 11-year-old boy dead in a storage bin. Placerville police announced the arrest of Jordan and Lindsay Piper. Police say Roman Lopez was found during a search of the couple's home on January 11th, 2020. Lopez was living there with his biological father, stepmother, and 7 other children. Police wouldn't say why they're bringing the charges now, but say they believe Roman was abused, poisoned, and tortured. Back for legal analysis are Frank Figliuzzi and Terri Austin. Frank, authorities say this was no simple case, considering how much the defendants moved and the forensics. But what do the charges of abuse and the facts that so many of the children who were in that home were put into protective services?
So this would be a complicated case even without physical relocations of the suspects and even without all the other children that have been in their care. But now it's complicated by those factors because each of those children will need to be particularly skillfully interviewed as to any abuses they either witnessed or experienced themselves. And the other factor here is the moves, the physical relocations might even be a clue that they kept moving to avoid witnesses or move into other jurisdictions, et cetera, to evade detection. And then lastly, I'm fascinated by the fact that 2 people are engaged or knowledgeable of this because it's very rare, thankfully, that 2 together would have knowledge and permit this to happen. It's not uncommon. It's not something that's never happened, but it's still considered rare. So they may eventually testify against each other. We'll have to wait and see. But there's more charges. Something tells me there's more charges on the way for these 2.
Now, Frank, I kind of want to piggyback off that last thought that there's more charges. Could this whole evasion idea because you know how sometimes they say it's not the crime, but it's the cover-up? Do you think that that evasion and that so-called cover-up could lead to additional charges as well?
Well, there's a couple of ways this could go. Additional charges could come in the form of additional victims, and I think that's where this may be headed. But also, we could see one of them charged with accessory after the fact or harboring, because they may have had guilty knowledge but done nothing about it. Don't be surprised if you see that charge coming.
I can see that happening, and thanks for the update on that as well, with additional charges coming up. Terri, Frank kind of touched on it, but I want you to kind of dive in a little bit deeper. The father is accused of failing to provide water and the mother for poisoning Roman, the young child. Do you see these defendants, as Frank alluded to, either pointing the finger at each other or maybe sticking together throughout the whole case?
You know, I think this might be one of those cases where we see the parents pointing the finger at each other. It's a very tragic case, obviously. I mean, there were 7 children in their custody, so you do have to think what is going on in that household with these other children. And to say that the father is failing to provide food and water, I could very easily see Jordan Piper saying, look, that wasn't my responsibility. That was my wife's responsibility. She should have been doing that. So you can't charge me with that. And look, I'm going to point the finger at her. She should have been making sure they got nourishment. The other issue is the fact that Lindsay Piper, she's accused of poisoning this 11-year-old boy. So that's a very aggressive charge. That's basically saying she went out of her way to kill him. So I definitely think we might see some going against each other here. And particularly, I think if the authorities want to get someone to turn on the other, they might go to the father and have him turn against the mother.
Yeah, I could definitely see that playing out. And we've, of course, seen that sometimes where two parents are accused of a crime and the father takes this kind of antiquated idea of, well, providing food or clothing isn't my job, it's the mother's job. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Of course, I think both parents are responsible for that, of course. Frank, thank you for joining us. Terry, thank you as well. And thank you for joining us here at Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.